how to grow your butt without growing your legs, without growing your quads. So a lot of women have trouble with this. They think that their legs just want to be big and their glutes just don't want to grow, but that's not it. The reason why your legs are growing so much is because you are overstimulating your legs during all of your glute exercises or during your leg exercises. You're using mainly your legs to contract and to go through the exercise. So that's the reason they're growing. It's not because they just want to be big, and because like you can manipulate the shape of your body by contracting the right muscles. So yes, you may have, naturally bigger legs, but it's not the reason why your glutes are so small. It's because you're understimulating your glutes and you're overstimulating your legs. So, when we have the right setup, when we have the right intent, and we have the right execution of an exercise, we're going to be working the muscles that we want. So that tells me that you're not doing that. So maybe you're not setting up properly for your squat. Maybe you're not executing it properly. Maybe you're extending, in a hip thrust, maybe you're extending with your knees, with your legs. Maybe in a squat you're letting your knees bend so much, so then your quad's gonna work, because that's the main function of the quad, is to bend and extend the knees. So this all matters when you're trying to grow your glutes and when you're not trying to grow another muscle. If you want to inhibit your legs from working, you have to get good at properly contracting your glutes. That's the reason why they're not growing. It's not because they don't want to grow like you think. So first, you have to understand, how do you contract the glutes? What has to happen in order to contract the glutes? And then what has to happen in order to contract the quads or to contract the legs? So I'm going to show you just an example with a squat. So a glute dominant squat and then a quad dominant squat. I'm going to show you the difference, and you're going to understand where you're going wrong, and how to have a glute focus exercise and how to have a quad focus exercise with any exercise that you do. Okay, so squat, I'm going to show you guys over here. Okay, so we know what the glutes do. It flexes and extends the hips and also abducts at the hip as well. So you have to be doing that in your squat. You can't be flexing mainly your knees, because that's where the quads come in. So in order to work the quads, your knee is going to be doing a lot of the flexing and extending. So that's how you contract your quads. You flex and extend your knees. So we don't want to do that in the squat if we're trying to work our glutes. So you have to make sure that you're not doing that during the squat. You're mainly focusing on the hip joint. So you're extending the hips. You're flexing and extending the hips instead of the knees. So I'm going to show you. So let's say if I wanted to do this for, we'll go from the side. So let's just say I wanted to do this for quads. So you would take a narrower stance, okay? And then you would focus a lot on the knees. So you're going to drive the hip back, and look at my knees. My knees go very forward. This is a lot of flexion at the knee joint. So it's going to be working a lot on my quads. So if this is what you're doing, you're going to be working a lot of your quads. So I'm loading this joint. I'm loading the quads. So you don't want to do that. Instead, you want to have a wider stance, and you want to focus on flexing the hips. So this is flexion at the hip. This is extension. So you want to flex the hips. Drive those hips back, and you're not letting your knees go forward. As soon as you do that, you're now activating your legs. You're activating your quads. So I'm going to refrain from letting my legs go forward. I'm going to keep driving my hips back, so I continuously flex my hip joint. So that's going to be activating more of the glutes. So I'm going to do that, driving my hips back. And I'm also at the bottom of the squat going to let my knees drive out, because we know that to contract the side of your glutes, that's hip abduction. So it's driving your thighs outward. So you're going to get a lot better contraction in your glutes, because you're doing the function of what the glutes are supposed to do. So right here, drive the hips back, drive the knees out, okay? You notice how my knees are not as forward as my other squat, where I'm going in and my knees are very forward, see? So, don't allow that knee to go forward. It should be fairly in line with the heel of your foot. Now I'm coming up. And notice how I'm keeping my hips back. Okay? I'm not coming up like this. Because as soon as I do that, I'm using my knees. Okay? So keep those hips back. And that's how you'll be doing a squat for your glutes. And you never want to come all the way up. Because again, I'm using a lot of my knees for that. And that's going to be activating your quads. So if you're trying to do a squat for your glutes, you never want to come all the way up in the squat, because then that's when your quad is the most flexed. When your leg is completely straight. You know, when you do a quad extension, your leg straightens out and it's fully contracted there. And another reason that you're having trouble activating your glutes and your quads are taking over is because of your exercise selection. So I know I showed a squat there, but to be honest with you guys, a lot of, especially if you're very quad dominant and your quads are already big, your quads are already developed in your legs, you probably want to stay away from the squatting, just because the nature of the exercise is going to be a lot of legs. It's a very leg dominant exercise. Even when you're doing it the way that I showed you for your glutes, you're still going to get your legs recruited. You're still going to get the quad muscles working on the way up. So if you have very, very, very active quads, you should pick exercises that are going to take your legs out of the equation as best as you can. So that's exercises like a reverse hyperextension, where your legs are completely straight, and then the only thing that's loaded is your glutes. So your legs can stay straight and not contract because there's no load. Your legs are not under load. Your glutes are under load. So a reverse hyperextension is really great, especially if you're quad dominant. Glute kickbacks are really great too. Hip abductor machines or banded hip abduction is really great. So it's all relative to yourself, really. Like for me, I don't really feel my quads that much in a squat, but other people will. Or, I don't feel my glutes too much in a hip thrust, but other people will. So you gotta find exercises that work for you too, that work for your mechanics of your body. Don't just do what other people do. Just because people do squatting, doesn't mean that you're gonna grow your glutes when you're doing a squat. So always, test out the exercises, find what works for you, play around with the positioning, and that's how you'll figure out exercises that work for you.